Hello guys, welcome back to R6 Esports Insider, and today we're going to do a recap of the group stage of this year's SI. Now, Group A was a pretty predictable group, except who got knocked out. But in first was the reigning world champions in G2. I had them in second in my predictions, but I did say that they could be first, and the only reason why I had them in second was because of their recent off-season tournament struggles. They looked great in all of their games, and I think they make another deep tournament run. Now in second was Dark Zero. I think this team is going to be really good in the next couple months once Bolo knocks off the rust and this team gets more chemistry, because I think they got the right pieces for the puzzle. They looked good against every team in their group except G2. They pushed both maps to 7-5 against them, so take that game with a grain of salt. It's possible they make a deep run, but I don't think they will in Sao Paulo, but they will for the major in Manchester. In third was exactly who I thought it was going to be, and that was Ninjas and Pajamas. This team struggled against the top two teams in their group in G2 and DZ, but they beat the bottom two in GK and FearX, so I have no idea how they'll do in playoffs because they could easily go deep or lose two in a row and be out, so we'll just have to see with them. In fourth was the last team I thought that would make it out of any group, and that is FearX. They proved me and the haters all wrong and 2-0'd GK, but they struggled mightily against every other team in their group, and to go deep they'll have to play one of those teams or teams like them, so they won't go deep. So I put them in the category of just happy to be here. And the last place team in Group A is GK. They won't be making a Cinderella run this time. I thought this team would possibly do some damage in this group with the upset over one of the top three teams in this group, but they didn't, and now they're going home, and I'm interested if they make a roster move or not. Now, Group B had a little bit of a shakeup with who I thought was going to finish in this group, but in first was a surprise team, and that was Space Station Gaming. I had them at third, and they're my favorite team, but I thought they would lose to FaZe and Wolves, but beat Bliss and D+. But they got their revenge win against FaZe and beat Bliss and D+, and I think they were 1v3 away from getting a perfect record in groups. I think this team will make a deep run at SI and prove they are a top world contender. At number 2 in the group was FaZe. They were really up and down, beating D+ in their first game, but losing 2-0 to SSG, then barely scraped by Bliss, then convincingly beat Wolves in their last game. I think they're still top contender at this tournament, but they do have some holes and issues that they need to solve fast if they want to go deep in Sao Paulo. At number 3 in Group B was Wolves. They started out very strong with the 2-1 win over SSG, then the 2-2-0s against D+ and Bliss, but then ultimately fall 2-0 to FaZe when first place in the group was on the line. I think they're still an inconsistent team, and they got the toughest game out of the first couple playoff games, which is against W7M, and if they lose, they'll play the best loser bracket team and bleed, so it's not looking good for Wolves right now. Now in fourth in Group B was Bliss. I knew they would give FaZe, SSG, and Wolves good games, but I knew more than likely they would lose to them, but they won against D+ when it mattered. I liked what I saw from this team. They got really good chemistry, and I think they are a dark horse team for top 8, but I think they're in the category of just happy to be here. Now the team to get sent home in Group B was D+. There's not a whole lot of positives from this team except really the great plays from Moogie Man, but they looked like the worst team at SI since they were the only team to not get a single map at the event. Group C lived up to the Group of Death title because every game was an absolute banger of a match, and it came down to the wire on who was going to get first and last in the group. But in first was a big surprise, but it was Virtus Pro. The Russian machine only had one loss in the group, and that was on the first day to Liquid, but they beat every other team in the group after that. But the highlight victory for them was knocking out the best team in the world in W7M in a thrilling match between two top contenders. I don't know if they can do that again, but I can see this team finishing top 4 at SI. At number 2 in Group C was W7M. The best team in the world showed that they are beatable with a loss to Virtus Pro and dropping maps to Liquid and Bleed. They are still the favorites to win it all, but it should be interesting to see what will happen. So, will the Titan fall? I don't think so, but you never know with CG Esports. At number 3 in Group C was Liquid. Liquid was really up and down in groups with a win over VP on day 1, but 2-2-1 losses to Bleed and W7M, and that 2-1 loss to W7M should have been a 2-0, but W7M threw a 6-0 match point lead against Liquid. But they closed out group strong against M80, so I really don't know where this team stands in the playoffs. At number 4 in Group C was Bleed. They really held their own against some of the best teams in the world with at least one map win against every team in their group. Their highlight win was against Liquid and almost beating Virtus Pro, with pushing map 3 all the way to a 7-7, but ultimately losing in the end. This team, I think, are ready for a miracle loser bracket run, and if I'm Wolves or W7M, I would be scared to face this hungry APAC team in the loser bracket. The team to get sent home in Group C was M80. I was right about the dropping of Kino and the addition of Yaga not being a smart move, and it cost them another early exit for this NA team. I think they have a lot to talk about this coming offseason, and it should be interesting if they make a roster change, and if so, who they'll drop and pick up. But man, what a disappointing year for M80. Now, Group D was definitely the weakest group at SI this year. I think the bottom 2 teams would have been knocked out in any other group, and who I thought was the best team in this group finished 3rd. But in first, and not dropping a single map, was Sonics. This team looked great, and I thought they would struggle because of the addition of Amy, but they looked great, and I think they might be ready for a deep run at SI. Now, in second place in Group D was Fury. I was so right about this team. They beat every team except Sonics in their group, and looked great while doing it, especially against Los. I don't know how far this team will go in the playoffs, but I think they're in the category of just happy to be here. In third place in Group D was Los. This team absolutely struggled in the easiest group of the entire event. I don't have a lot of hope in this team right now. Maybe they are this year's Astralis who struggled in groups last SI but finished top 4. But it's hard to believe in that with the struggles they had in groups. In fourth place in Group D was Team Falcons. I have no idea how this team made it out with having 3 different rosters in 4 games. They surprised me though. But they go into the category of just happy to be here. The team that got sent home in Group D was Scars. I thought they were going to make it out of groups, but the struggles from Atlanta carried over into Sao Paulo. I think what costed this team was relying on Rex hero plays to put them over the top. But what happened to this team from Copenhagen to now definitely needs to be studied. Now onto who I think the best and worst teams, the most surprising and most disappointing teams, the best player, and the best match in groups. I think Virtus Pro is the best team in groups because of the fact that they finished first in the hardest group and they beat W7M in the best of 3. I know they have a loss in their group and G2 and Sonics didn't, but those teams lacked a big signature win and Virtus Pro has that big signature win. I thought I would be talking about Fear X here, but it was D+ who I thought was the worst team in groups. I mean, they didn't win a single map, and I don't see this team being a contender for a while, so there's not really much explanation for this one. The most surprising team in groups has to be SSG, because I had no expectation for this team to finish first in their group with teams like FaZe and Wolves, but they did it, and looked great. So it should be interesting if they can keep it up in the playoffs. The most disappointing team in groups was definitely Los. I mean, they are just coming off of a grand final appearance in Atlanta, and they were in the weakest group, so I thought they would get first in their group and be a top contender for the Hammer, but so far it's not looking that way. Now onto best player in groups. This was honestly a toss-up between Citizen and Herds. I mean, Citizen was easily the best player statistically, with a whopping 1.36 rating, a 77% cost, and 91 kills to only 48 deaths, which is an insane KD. But he was doing this in the weakest group of the event, and so to me, I can't put him as the best player. So that reward has to go to Herds. I should have put him in my top 5 players at SI, but I'm giving him the spotlight now. I mean, his stats aren't as good as Citizen's, but he was easily in the hardest group at SI, and that speaks volume to what kind of player Herds is. His stats were really good with a 1.04 rating, 110 kills, 31 entry kills, which was the most in groups, and an insane headshot percentage of 76%, which adds up to 84 of his 110 kills being headshot kills. Herds is making a name for himself to be the best player in the world, and honestly, he might be. The best match in groups was definitely VP versus W7M. I mean, this match lived up to the hype and then some. At the beginning of map 1, which was Virtus Pro's map pick by the way, it looked like W7M was going to run away with it, but VP bounced back and pushed it to overtime, but ultimately lost their own map pick at the end. In map 2, VP looked absolutely unstoppable on their attack and went up 4-2 at the half and then finished the game 7-3 on W7M's own map pick. In map 3, W7M started off strong with a 4-2 half on the defense, but VP's defense was too much for W7M with a 5-1 half and an ultimate win of 7-5 on the last map. This game had it all, and this is why I think it was the best game in groups. That's it for my recap of the group stage. I'll do a recap of the playoffs after the grand final. So thank you for watching, and I hope I catch you in the next video. God bless.
I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless. Fearless.